On August 29, Hong Kong's South China Morning Post website published an article titled BRICS Expansion Can Help Africa Deepen Relations with China and Asia, authored by Mohammed bin Ari. The article is excerpted as follows. The 6 countries invited to join the BRICS last week include the African countries Egypt and Ethiopia. Joining the group will not only make it easier for Cairo and Addis Ababa to sell to other BRICS members, it will also help create a fair international economic system. On August 21st, in Johannesburg, South Africa, a man took pictures at the media center in the Sandton Convention and Exhibition Center, where the 15th BRICS Summit was held. Photo by Lee Yawi. Expansion and the possibility of a common currency for trade among the BRICS would help counter U.S. unilateralism. This will help raise the voices of the Global South, as Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi puts it. Greater representation of Africa in BRICS will further strengthen the continent's relationship with China. Ghana's founding Prime Minister, Kwame Nkrumah, predicted that China's rapid economic growth would pose a valid challenge to America's industrial and thus political control of the capitalist world. He called on African countries to follow a Chinese-style path of development and industrialization. Over the past 20 years, China-Africa relations have achieved remarkable development, and China is Africa's largest trading partner. Beijing funds major projects in Africa through platforms such as the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation and the Belt and Road Initiative. Against the backdrop of fierce competition between the United States and China, every African country is trying to balance its relationship with the world's 2 largest economies. The United States' comprehensive containment of Russia after the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict has also added to the complexity of diplomatic challenges. It is important for Africans to realize the real impact of the US-China confrontation and how Washington is trying to drive a wedge between China and African countries. Africa's economic potential has attracted investment from outside powers. Africans should realize, however, that U.S. interest in Africa is driven primarily by a desire to counter China. Western diplomacy in Africa is mainly based on economic interests and unilateralism. For Africans, however, China's engagement with the continent goes beyond economic interests to promote African culture and traditions through educational exchange programs and forums such as the 3rd China-Africa Peace and Security Forum being held this week. Many Africans I spoke to in Cairo, whether Egyptians, Sudanese, or Libyans, resent the notion that Africa is a prey to superpowers or seen as a competing platform for external powers. However, they are more inclined towards China than Western powers. Africans should keep looking east. America's influence in Africa has waned, while China's has grown. That has raised concerns in Washington, prompting it to pressure African governments to distance themselves from Beijing and Moscow. However, Africans should ask, what good does our alliance with the West give us other than the plundering of the continent's resources? Africa should continue to strengthen its relations with China and Asia.